Good morning and welcome back to the Closer's Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. This episode is proudly sponsored by David L. Brown. David is a longtime supporter of the Closer's Inner Circle podcast and your partner in Success Radio, and he is a champion of meaningful conversations that spotlight integrity, service, and entrepreneurial growth. His encouragement and steady belief in the power of purpose-driven business makes a real difference behind the scenes. He can be found at dbrowncompany.com and on LinkedIn as well as other social media platforms, and tell him we sent you. So David is not only a show sponsor, he's also a valued friend to both of us. And we are deeply grateful for the trust and support that he continues to show. So today, in this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, we are diving into the Closers Part 2, page 216. And this is where Ben shares one of the recurring truths from his decades of sales notes. He's got notes and notepads everywhere. I keep saying, I want them. Box them up and ship them to me. I'll take them. And what we're talking about here is have faith in quality. We've touched on it a bit, but we're going to go a bit deeper into it today. And here's the thing, contrary to popular belief, most people aren't fixated on price. They're focused on quality. They want to know that what you're offering is built to last, that you are in it for the long haul. Ask Ben about his business cards, and that they can trust you to stand behind your products or your services. And this ties directly into the know, like, and trust principle that great salespeople live by. Price may start the conversation, but trust and quality and faith, really, in what you're offering, close the deal. So listen as we unpack what this means for modern sales professionals and how to build a reputation that, excuse me, that earns confidence before you even ask for the sale. Ben, it's Wednesday. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
I am peachy. I am. It's all good. I woke up this morning at 4, as I always do, and it just got better and better from there. Some days you're like, oh, geez, but today I've had hit after hit after hit in a good way, and I'm all happy. Now, if that'll continue through the day, I'll be even happier.
Well, just let it continue for about another hour. That's all I ask.
You're a coward. You're worried that I'm going to yell at you like I ever yell at you. Well, never mind. I'll just apologize right now. Sorry. So what are we talking about today? Know, like, and trust. We've talked about that a lot.
Well, it's funny. I sometimes get self-conscious about it. I keep waiting for somebody in an audience somewhere to say, "You're not going to do that no like and trust again thing, are you?" Uh, Somebody, Mike Ferry, I think it was, a sales trainer. I haven't heard from him in a long time. I hope he's still with us. Um, they say he told the story. He got it in front of a group somewhere, and they said, "Are you going to say what you did? Tell us what you told us last year."
Uh-oh.
And he said, "You got the same problems you had last year?" And they said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Then yes, maybe you'll get it
Oh,
this time."
that's okay. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. And the thing is, there are only, I have a 10-day seminar. Fortunately, I'm not asked to do it very often because it's too much time out of people's schedules. But I have a 10-day seminar, a 5-day seminar, a 3-day seminar. I could do a 2-day, a 1-day seminar, and I have a hour talk I can give. Well, I can give 10 minutes of it, which brings me to the real point. In the 10-day seminar, I cover a lot of interaction and individual case studies and so on, but I cover basically the secret of selling, which I can explain to anyone who's really listening in 5 minutes, 10 minutes if they're taking notes and asking questions. There are only a few, as Mike Ferry said, you got the same problems you had last time. I've got, as you know, because I say it incessantly, an 86% closing ratio on serious ticket items, not taking a book order, but on, let me come do a $20,000 seminar for you. Let me take your order of 5 books and bump it up to 50 books and so on. Those are the ones I count as attempts, and 86% of them over the years have closed. successfully. Uh, but in all of that, the reason is I cheat. I sell only quality products and services. You've heard this before,
I
that are
have.
competitively priced. They don't have to be the cheapest, but you don't want to be outlandish, item for item or quality for quality. Competitively priced. I spend my days talking to qualified people qualified to buy that particular product or service. And I don't just mean money. We can probably solve that problem. I'm generally talking about they need it, want it, or it'll solve a major problem for them. Meanwhile, my job is to become a person that they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe. To which many people then say, well, Ben, you've been at this for many years. That takes a long time to build up. No, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to get a real foothold and start down that path. Frequently, before I'm seated in their home or office, sometimes while still out in the hall or the driveway. Uh, is because that's really what I'm there to sell. I'm there to sell Ben Gay the third, so that when he endorses a product, service, price, whatever, it's good. It's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. I don't know if the current crop of people know about it, but there is or was a very famous magazine, Good Housekeeping. They had a seal of approval, and my mother's generation, she would open up the magazine and look down at the bottom first to see if the Good Housekeeping seal of approval was there. People say, well, they're buying ads, of course it's there. Not true. When I was with Holiday Magic Cosmetics, we were buying full page ads in Good Housekeeping for the ladies to have the opportunity to buy our cosmetics. But it took from the time we started buying full page ads to the time we got the Good Housekeeping seal of approval, which I thought would be just automatic. You don't want to offend me. One of your largest advertisers. They said, no, no, we don't want to offend you, but the seal doesn't come with advertising dollars. It comes based on the quality of the product. And I tested that a little bit because I thought, okay, they're bluffing. That's a good negotiating tactic. They weren't bluffing. In fact, you could get the Good Housekeeping seal of approval without buying an ad. If you applied for it, separate department, they had procedures they went through. I'm not even sure they knew who advertised and who didn't advertise. It was that high a quality. So you want the Good Housekeeping seal of approval or whatever the modern day equivalent is stamped on your forehead so that when you say, based on what you've told me, this is the clothes I use 95% of the time, based on what you've told me, or based on what we've been discussing, here's what I suggest we do. Now that I'm known, liked, trusted, and people feel safe with me, and I have the Good Housekeeping seal of approval on me, they buy. They tend to buy. And if they don't, it's frequently not an objection as much as a condition. Let's say I'm selling a $20,000 seminar where I fly in and talk to their troops for a day or part of a day, whatever they want. Uh, but they have a $5,000 budget. And in some cases, they have $5,000, period. Not just a budget, that's what they got. So I can usually put them down for, okay, we won't do it this year, but we'll do it next year.
Right.
And let me give you a few tips. So next year you'll have, there are lots of cute ways to overcome that. We don't have $20,000 to invest in this, which is exactly the reason you should invest in
You
this.
need it. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't have
Let me point that
$20,000.
out to you.
Yeah. I told you last week, I think it was, I saw that great ad on television for some sort of pain reliever. Um, I forget what it was
Bengay the
called.
third. It's Bengay. It's the
Oh,
pink
yeah,
stuff.
I know about that one now. It was something, it's one of those patches you put on and it
Oh,
calms. And the guy said, he says it right in the ad, if you're thinking about it, you've seen it, you've seen the patch go on, you've seen testimonials now of uh, I haven't been pain free in 16 years. I put the patch on.
Mhm.
I'm pain free now, et cetera. So you've seen all that earlier in the commercial. And then he says, if you're thinking about buying it, you need it.
You already need it, right?
Yeah,
We did
or else
talk
you wouldn't
about
be
that.
watching and paying attention to this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're talking, I just made a note while you were talking. You're talking about the good housekeeping seal of approval.
Mhm.
I wrote down if you're in England, it's the royal warrant, which is the same thing.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I've never,
If you're going to go to a shop on High Street or buy a dress that Princess Catherine wears, it's probably going to come from an outfit that has the royal warrant.
hmm.
That's a massive seal of approval.
Yeah, well, does that have anything to do with the queen or king or whatever?
Hmm. Well, it did
Yeah.
when the Queen was still alive, yeah. But
Wow.
yeah, it's been around forever. You can look, I think it used to be, I can't remember that guy that died. He had the big store and his son Dodie, whatever, he died with Princess Diana. They had the royal warrant until they didn't. And then after that, things kind of went downhill for them.
Well, that's one of those things. I'm not familiar with it. I'll look it up when we're done today. But
If I
I
had
know
owned it, yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Somehow they built that brand up, maybe because it was the queen, the royal this or the king or
Yeah, I don't know the
whatever.
history, but yeah.
Yeah, or maybe they just did it independently. But the end result is they've established if you see this on it, it's okay.
Well, and it has to come from the royal family or some,
Okay.
the great people in the background. I don't know. You can't just slap that up on your building without getting in big, big trouble. So it has to come from somehow the royal family.
Well,
So it's a
that's exactly what we're
huge,
talking about.
that's exactly right. This is your seal of approval and trust. And once you lose that trust, you lose the seal.
Well, that's for those of you who are better schooled in English history than I am, that might be another way to phrase what you're trying to accomplish, not only with your product and your company, but with you. I was talking to a dear friend one day. I talk about him frequently, Hugh Harris, who now owns a bunch of very successful restaurants in Georgia and Florida. Great guy. I met him in the home improvement business. He went to a garage sale and bought a copy of the Closers Part One for 50 cents. And then he called me, and I've done seminars for him. All of his people had to have the closers, etc. We've probably done several millions of dollars in business together because he bought a book for 50 cents. But uh, Hugh is one of those people who builds trust. I mean, he's like Jimmy Rucker. You like him immediately. You trust him. You'll never meet anybody he screwed over. Um, and whatever he touches turns to gold. The home improvement business, for various reasons, ceased to interest him, and they sold out to somebody, an investment company, and he left. And I think they're out of business. Oddly enough, today I have on a polo shirt that says Dixie Home Crafters. When I reached into the closet this morning, they had 10 major offices. They had 5 colors of shirts. So Hugh sent out a memo because I said to him, I'd love to have one of those shirts. They look nice. Sent out a memo to all of his offices, send uh, Ben Gay one of each of your colors. Well, they all bought from the same vendor. The 5 colors were preordained, so any one of the offices could have filled it. But instead, over a 2 or 3 days period, I got 50, uh, one of each color from every one of the 10 offices. I got 50 Dixie Home Crafter shirts. So, oh, and then Gutter Guardian is on the sleeve. So people around town think I'm in the home improvement business because Gigi doesn't like me wearing my Ben Gay shirt.
Well, put that shovel down.
Yeah, well, she says when we bump into somebody, I don't want the rest of the conversation to be about you.
Oh, that's a wife thing.
Yeah. And Dixie Home Crafters, oddly enough, in the South, that was not controversial. Out here, occasionally someone will, if I have on one of the shirts, occasionally someone will say, uh, Dixie, huh? What do you mean by that exactly? And they mean, you must be a racist. You must be a,
Oh, geez.
type denier. Oh, and another
Do
cute
you
thing.
bless their hearts?
Yeah. Uh, Another cute thing. It doesn't happen all the time, but maybe once a month I bump into a homeless person because when I've pretty much worn out or it's just not spiffy looking anymore, my shirts or whatever, I put them in a bag and we take them uh, to people who distribute things to people who are down on their luck, including the homeless people. So on more than one occasion, I've been walking up Main Street in my Dixie Home Crafter shirt and met somebody coming the other way in a Dixie Home Crafter shirt and who'd gotten it through the whatever. So I've told Hugh, if you come to town, you have not started a new branch out here. Those are probably homeless people. And then somebody
Oh,
said to me one day in a restaurant, you're Dixie Home Crafters, you're with that homeless people organization? And I
oh
said,
my.
well, it's a long story. No, I
Oh,
don't, I don't have time to tell you.
I needed to empty my closet. I just found I wanted to make sure I wasn't giving you, poor information. Today there are approximately 850 individuals and companies that hold the royal warrant,
Whoa.
and they are granted by either King Charles or the Prince of Wales. So it's it says that, these are the emphasis is on how good you are. And if you don't have that special something, you take care of your people, like you said, quality goods, quality everything. Once that kind of goes away, so does your warrant, so does everything
Hmm.
else. So, if you want to have a good housekeeping sale or a royal warrant of all your own, stay in touch with yourself and stay in touch with your people and your clients. Don't
We're
ever
doing that,
step
and
on them.
you're a recipient of it with the National Association of Professional
I
Salespeople
am. Yeah.
seal of approval, and that has come over the years. It's on millions of books, mine and other people's, and seminars, and the podcast we're doing now. You carry the NAP seal of approval,
Yeah,
and
on the
that's
image, I
that.
sure do.
Yes, slowly but surely, I'm hearing stories about people saying, because in the very beginning it was only on the closers, what we call part one now. But
Hmm.
but now people are saying, "Oh, you're in sales training. Do you have the NAP seal of approval?" And they want to know because if you do, or the Good Housekeeping seal, or the Royal Warrant, or a strong referral from a trusted person,
Right.
it cuts out all that other stuff that you just don't have to go through. Can I trust you? How do I know you're not a thief? How do I know what you're saying is true? And so on. If they know what the seal, whichever seal we're talking about, is, if they know about the seal and you got it, it's handled.
And you were talking earlier, Ben, about trust, and you said, and
Mhm.
I've heard you say this before, that because people say, well, Ben, you've been doing this forever. Of course, people trust you, but it doesn't take that long. You've said it over and over again, and I agree with you. And I'm going to give you an example. When I said I was having a really good morning, I was. Tuesdays is when I do my pre-interviews for Your Partner in Success Radio. I do 5 in a row. By noon, I can't talk no more. My voice is gone. It's just shot. And I catch myself saying, did I already say this? Because I'm telling the same people the same stuff and it could get repetitious in my mind. But I got an email this morning that said, Denise, and he's not on the show yet. He won't be here until August or, well, September, October, actually. But he said, you were telling me in the pre-interview that you're a web developer. Can we talk? And I said, absolutely. I'm building a new website. It didn't take long. That was yesterday.
Well, they trust you.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, they
It doesn't
know.
take long.
No, not at all. They've seen the product in action. They've heard that you know what you're talking about based on what you talk about. Uh, you have on people like David, who just you were just discussing, who's sponsoring this episode, who are if he endorses you and you endorse him, you both win
Exactly.
because you're both trusted. David, by the way, is one of those people. I met him at a seminar. You even told me which one it was one time, Tony
Tony
Rubleski.
Robleski. Yep.
Yes, that what it was. I knew it was a seminar. I'd forgotten which one, but I met him and almost as a break started, we immediately agreed to have lunch together. We became buddies, and I've endorsed him ever since. Anything pops up on the internet from him, I give it three thumbs up. I read them out of curiosity because I can always learn something. But he's one of those people that I would endorse without knowing what it was he said because I know, like, trust him, and feel safe with
Exactly. And he told me a story once. You'll have to tell me if this is correct or if it's I have a faulty memory, which is entirely possible. He
him.
said that he was sitting next to you at this first, encounter, and you guys were chatting. He had no idea who you were, that you were this very famous person sitting next to him and having conversation. He didn't know.
Well, that goes to show I must not be a very famous person. I've got
But
a
you
name
are.
that's sort of easy to remember. Ben Gay gets me great seating in restaurants because they assume that I have something to do with the product. They'll
Right.
say, "Are you Ben Gay?" And I say, "No, that was my grandfather. I'm Ben Gay the third."
Oh, that makes
And
it even better.
yeah, and I let them they they can think what they want to think. I, I don't say yes, I'm the product or whatever. I do kid with people, and they say, "Yeah, no, I use that all the time." I said, "Great, we get a nickel a tube, so
Oh
keep
my God.
using it."
Somebody's
But
got,
if I want to get into I did this at the Savoy one time in London. I wasn't sure that they were knew what Ben Gay was, but when I called down to make the reservations, hard to get into that restaurant anytime, and this was on 30 minutes notice. I said, "Hi, I'm the advanced person for Dr. Ben Gay, who's staying in your hotel. Is there any chance he can get in?" And like I've done 100 other times, "Oh, yes, 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 we will save a table. We'll get a table cleared for Dr. Gay right now." I didn't know I was a doctor, but so I added that to the thing. I'm here with Dr. Ben Gay, and he needs a little. And you say Ben Gay slowly so they hear both words independently, and it'll get you. It's like Ray Considine in The Green Door. It will get you into
right.
all sorts of places.
Now tell me again why you kept getting kicked out of school.
Got kicked out of school, high school, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh
Was
yeah.
it because you of your personality?
Well, I was
Maybe.
voted wittiest when I came back to Murphy High School for my senior year, having been asked to go away early in my junior year. So apparently, wittiest had already risen to the top, and so away I went. My father had money. I guess if he hadn't, the next stop would have been reform school. So I went to St. Andrews, an all boys school at the time. It's not now. Timing is everything. If I'd been up on that mountain with 50% girls in the class, I'd have been a happy camper. But it was 100% boys, and I wasn't happy. And it was run by the Order of the Holy Cross, a bunch of sexually frustrated monks, and who
They
were,
teach algebra too. I hate them.
yeah, and several of them were sadists. So I wasn't a happy guy there, and I was still the witty guy. So I got in trouble, I'm sure, frequently. They had the lick system with the wooden paddles. I got more
Ooh,
than my share of licks in. So I
yeah.
kept telling my mother and dad, I want out of here. I'm sorry. Let me go back to regular high school. No, you've earned your way there, and they'll shape you up. And there were some good things that came out of it. I was a much better student afterwards than I was before. But when I finally realized they weren't going to come get me, it was up in the mountains above Chattanooga, Tennessee. They lived in Atlanta. I just walked down the long dirt driveway to the main road and started hitchhiking. and
Oh,
I hitchhiked all the way to Atlanta. Oh, funny, the first leg of that, there was a little town called Mont Eagle, and the railroad track came through it with the lights. You stop here whether they're flashing or not because a train might be coming. So when we were hitchhiking back and forth to the movies or whatever, I knew that the truck had to stop in Mont Eagle. So this tractor trailer comes into town, slows down where I was starting to hitchhike right outside the school. I hopped on the back, on those ladders on the back of a 18 wheeler, hopped on the back and thought this is uncomfortable, but all I have to do is get to Mont Eagle. When he stops, I'll hop off and start hitchhiking. And turned out this truck driver didn't believe in stopping at railroad crossings.
oh my God.
So the next stop down the winding mountain road was Chattanooga, which I think was 80 or 90 miles down the hill. And there was Ben Gay hanging on the back of the trailer. So anyway, I hitchhiked back to Atlanta, called mom and dad, and I said, I want to come home. And they said, well, we're not going to go all the way up there and pick you up. I said, I've saved you that trouble. I'm at the Varsity, world's famous drive-in restaurant in downtown Atlanta. I'm at the Varsity. What are you doing there? Well, I hitchhiked. Meanwhile, back at St. Andrews, I'd been thrown out of there.
No, really?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Some of
Yeah,
these people are just stick in the muds.
they just don't have a sense of humor.
So, but it turned my life around.
I bet
Probably
it
told you the
did.
story. I went to the wrong room when I got back into Murphy High School. They said they'd give me another shot. I went to the wrong room because I hadn't been there long enough to know where the right rooms were. And I'm looking around in Atlanta, then high school started in the eighth grade. So you had 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 all in one school. And there's a huge difference in size between the eighth graders and the seniors because of the growth period in the middle. So I'm looking around this room and they're talking about things that I've known for a long time. And I was in a room full of midgets. So it dawned on me, oh, I'm in the wrong room. So I got up, said, where is Ms. I knew on my little sheet it was Mrs. Griffin. I was supposed to be with the senior English teacher and feared like Godzilla, the whatever. So the lady directed me, and I ran down the hall and went literally skidding into her room. Now, here's Ben Gay, who's been thrown out of school. Rumor has it he's back with us. He's funny, and he comes skidding in late. And Ms. Griffin, who I'd never met, I just heard of her, looked up and said, Mr. Gay, I presume.
Well,
I
she'd
thought,
heard
oh,
of you.
yeah, this is not good. So she got up, took one of those chairs, where the chair and the desk and everything is all built together in one piece, spun one around right beside her desk, and she said, you're sitting here beside me this year. Apparently, she'd been to a teachers' meeting where they had warned her.
Were you
And I,
facing the class or did you have your back to the class?
facing the class.
Oh, that's even worse. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going.
So she says, you're sitting here. And she said, I forget whether she said good news or bad news, but she said, you're going to win the state writing championship. I thought that's funny. I can't write postcards home from boarding school, and I'm going to win the state writing championship. And you're going to speak at graduation. Well, because she controlled who did, as it turned out, the third slot. First was valedictorian, second was salutatorian, third was who gave the prayer. She had total control over that. So, A, I won the state writing championship, much to everyone's surprise, especially mine. And then B, on graduation night at the Atlanta Municipal Auditorium, when she nodded at me. It was time. I stood up from my seat, went down the steps to the lectern, and did the please rise signal with both my hands, and 3,000 people stood up. And I remember thinking, this is good. I like this. I never had 10 people do what I asked them to do. Now 3,000 are standing. So in two fell swoops, She turned me into a writer. I've made a living as a writer, 35 books, ghostwritten, co-written, written with my name, etc. 35 books. I've given 5,000 paid speeches, probably another 5,000 free ones in prisons and high schools and so on, and have become pretty good as a public speaker, pretty good as a writer, all because I was late getting to her class. I've often wondered if I had walked in on time, just gotten a seat in the back, which was my tendency, if we would have had that encounter or that situation. Therefore, I wonder if you and I would be talking today. I've got a copy of The Closers Part 2 right here in front of me. Would that book have been written? Would I have talked to I don't know how many different groups that is. Probably if you average uh, 3 or 4 or 500 people per room, I've talked to 15,000, 20,000 people at once. But the way I figure roughly I've talked in person, face to face, to 2.5 million people. And all of that came from A, being raised properly, but by my mother and dad, although it didn't kick in as quick as they'd hoped. B, becoming a writer thanks to Miss Griffin. C, becoming a speaker thanks to Miss Griffin. It changed everything. And when I went to San Quentin and began teaching people builders and later at Lompoc Federal Penitentiaries and Frontiera, a state prison for ladies, uh, most of what I taught, I'd say 90% of what I taught, came from being raised properly, Ms. Griffin, Ms. Griffin, and another history teacher I had, Mr. Evans. All of those people had major impacts on my life, and through teaching thousands and thousands of people in up close seminars and a few million people in bigger groups in speeches, um, I've changed, helped change. They had to do the work, hundreds of thousands of lives because I was late to Ms. Griffin's English class in 1960. Isn't it funny how the world twists and turns based on
Yeah,
things you would? Somebody
it
asked me the other
has.
day, have you made any major mistakes in your life? And after I quit laughing and choking,
So which day?
yeah,
Let's
I
see, it
said,
was
yeah,
Wednesday. Yeah.
what would you go back and change was the next question. And I said, well, however I got here, I'm sitting exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do with the person, Gigi, that I want to do it with, and I do it when I want to do it. So for me to change anything in my life, you'd have to explain to me what we're changing and what would the effect be
Right.
going forward. Because if it wiped out the end result of living in Placerville, California with Gigi Ronzoni, writing and speaking and doing what I love to do, the answer is no. Any mistake I've made is fine. Uh, there are many that I would change if God would say, but you're still be in the same place. Nothing will change at the end result. And sure, I've got a few things I've said and done that I shouldn't have, and I'd love to find the person and apologize. My sister and I were driving down Ponce de Leon Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, one day. I was already living in California, but I was back visiting. We're driving down the street, and I look over and I see this little convenience store, old fashioned one, not like a 7-Eleven, but a little old fashioned convenience store on Ponce de Leon Avenue on the right. And I veered in and parked. And Jane said, Jane's my sister, what are you doing? I said, I've got something I've got to wrap up. Walked in, and I said, how much is a case of Carling's Black Label beer? And he chilled and he told me. And I said, okay. And I got out the money and laid it on the counter. He says, wait a minute, let me get your beer. I said, I already got it. Because years before, Jimmy Rucker and I had been driving down Ponce and pulled in. There was no one there, or he went in the back to
Oh,
get something.
I
And
know where you're going.
he was using a case of Carling's Black Label to prop open the door. And my Corvette Amand Spider convertible was right there, 3 steps, if that, away from the case of beer with the top down. So I picked it up, tossed it in the back seat, and we bought a candy bar or something and left. So I'm guessing 10 years later, let's say, I'm driving down the road and there's a mistake I made and I made it good. As I'm leaving, he said, "No, no, you didn't get your beer." And I'm going, "Yes, yes, I did." You
Do
may
you
not have owned
remember
this,
when?
yeah, you may not have even owned the store at the time, but I already
Yeah.
got it
But it laid
thinking,
heavy on your heart, though.
it did. It not like something I thought about day in and day out. I didn't think about it till I saw that store again. But then it was like one of those flashbacks in a movie. I remember the night. I remember the brand, king size, Carlin's Black Label beer. And I remember everything about it, including heart racing as we pulled away, assuming the police were going to get us next. But we got away with it. So I
You
got a
know,
few of those I like to change, but
yeah.
by and large, it's worked out pretty well.
See, and I hadn't heard that one. And I do have a couple of questions or observations about Miss Griffin, but I have to tell you, you're talking about grabbing the beer and running. I got a ticket. I think it was in Reno for smacking the dog crap out of my brother. I was driving. He was in the passenger side, and we saw a very big girl walking down the street. And darned if he didn't roll down the window and moo at her. I reached out and just smacked him. I got the ticket. I'm still mad about it.
What did it say on the ticket? Hitting your brother or?
Speeding, running a red light. I don't know. They just gave probably a broken tail light. The guy said, "You shouldn't hit people." And I said, but he wouldn't even let me tell me. I said, "He's my brother." He said, "You really shouldn't hit your brother." I said, "Oh, you've got family trouble. Okay, give me the ticket. You just, give me the time." And my brother's laughing. I thought, "You little jerk." He's dead now. He has been for a long time. And I still remember it was just voluntary. I didn't even think about it. I just reached over and sidearmed him, yelling with and slapped him back. He's like, "What'd you do that for?" I said, "You did not just do that to that girl." He said, "Well, yeah, if you'll back up, I'll do it again." And boy, that's when we really went to town. So, no. But am I sorry for it? No, not really. So and I had forgotten all about it until you're talking about, racing out of there. But back to Miss Griffin, and I think I've asked you this before. How do you suppose she knew in her heart and her soul that she was going to help you or help you discover or mold you into being an adult person? Because she didn't know. She hadn't worked with you. She hadn't even seen you write your name down, but she was going to do something with you. And my second question is, when you're through trying to dissect what I just said, tell us about the last time you spoke with Miss Griffin.
Yeah, let me do that one first. So if I choke up, I'll be over it by the time I get to the second half of the story. Jimmy Rucker and I were driving around Atlanta one day. I was back visiting, and we drove past Murphy High School. It's since been renamed. It's called something else, but J.C. Murphy High School. So I said, let's go in. So we went in, walked up to the counter in the principal's office, and somebody looked up and said, "Well, Ben Gay, how are you?" And I thought, oh my God, they never forget. You'd think bygones would be bygones all these years later.
No, no, not where I went to school. My
Yeah.
sister had to go in and say, "Listen, I'm Denise's sister. I'm not like her." And she just,
Yeah,
like you
this is
said, she
different.
got yeah, she got the objection out of the way straight out of the chute.
Well, anyway, I talked to the nice lady behind the desk who I frankly didn't remember, but whatever. She had known me from being sent to the office numerous times. And I said, "Well, can I look around without getting arrested or something?" She said, "Sure, I'll put the word out that you guys are here." And she knew Jimmy.
I bet.
So I said, "Are any of the old people still here?" She said, "Well, you had Mr. Evans for history, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah. He's in the same room he was in when you were here. The subject matter, he was changed. The neighborhood had changed. He was now teaching what to do if your parents are arrested,
Oh God.
which when I was there wasn't one of the top topics
Mm-mm.
in the world. So that was sort of sad because he was a great history teacher. But we walked down, he recognized us and so on. And then as we're leaving, the lady comes out of the office again and says, "Now listen, there are two people you have to call." And yeah, I guess she'd called the central office and gotten their numbers. "You have to call Ms. Ritchie. She was the art teacher. I was not an artist. I didn't know she would even remember me." She said, this lady said, Ms. Ritchie thinks you're the funniest person that ever lived. She's talked about you when you were here and ever since you've been gone. Call her." So I did, and we had a delightful conversation. She said, "And then call Ms. Griffin." And I said, "Whoa, she's still with us?" "Absolutely. And she talks about you frequently. Call her." So I called her. I called both of them. But with Ms. Griffin, I called and I said, "You probably don't remember me, but my name is Ben Gay." And she said, "Remember you?" Then she started laughing.
I'm laughing too.
Yeah,
Like, how
she
could I
said, she
forget
said,
you, you little varmint?
yeah. It reminded me of Pat Hall, my buddy, said the other day to somebody, "Two is company. Ben's a crowd." So
Oh,
apparently the reputation lingers on. But anyway, I called her. I said, "You don't know how much you changed my life." I've given whatever it was at the time. Now it would be 5,000 paid speeches, 5,000 more free ones. I've traveled all over the world, or much of the world. Um, I've enjoyed a little success. And she says, we've all heard about it. And I said, "I've written whatever it was at the time, 5, 10 books, I don't know. Uh, and one of them's a bestseller." And she said, "I've heard about that." And I said, "I just want to thank you." It was nearing dinner time, and I said, "Listen, I'll let you go. I know you must have had thousands of these calls over the years, but I just want to get my 2 cents in. I really appreciate you." And she said, "Ben, I taught for 40 years. You're the first person that's ever called."
that breaks my heart every time I
Yeah,
hear
I
you
mean,
say
how
that.
is that possible?
I don't know.
She got up in the morning, probably had 5 or 6 periods to teach that day. In every one, she must have touched deeply one life, in some cases, a dozen lives, whatever. And 40 years go by and no one calls and says thank you.
I know. And
And
every
and
time we
and
talk about her, I
minus
think of
that
the
lady chasing me down and saying you got to call Miss Griffin, I would
right.
have been one of the ones that didn't call in 40 years.
Oh. And every time we talk about her, I read a book a long time ago. I was reading when I was 3, and my parents had the hardback Reader's Digest, which may have been relocated to my home when I moved out. Maybe my mom was asking for one of them. I said, "I don't know." She goes, "Do I have to come to your house?" "No, no." You know, I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. But they were getting ruined. They were getting, they were in a closet that was damp. As I just took them home with me, and but there was one story in there, and I cannot remember who. I think there's a movie about it, but Good Morning, Miss Dove. That was a heartbreaking. It was sad but beautiful at the same time. And I always think of Miss Griffin when I think of Good Morning, Miss Dove, because nobody liked her. She was just a very stern teacher, but then one day I think if I recall, she tried to stand up and couldn't. And all of a sudden, the entire town rallied over around her. And two of her grown students kind of picked her up and did the armchair with their
Mhm.
arms and put her, and she was just embarrassed. But she had to be hospitalized. And after that, people understood that she wasn't just this stern teacher, the best teacher, but she was a human. It's just
Mhm.
a lovely story. Good morning, Miss Dove.
Somebody asked me one time years ago, I now know, but I didn't at the time. They said, "What was Miss Griffin's first name?" I said, "My teachers didn't have first names."
No, no.
It was, I think it was Miss. I don't remember Ms. being a thing.
Oh, it wasn't. It was Miss. My kindergarten teacher who tried to call my mom a liar, call me a liar because I was reading at 5. I'd already been reading for 2 years. And I remember Miss Keller saying, "Well, she's lying to us." And my mom said, "Oh, yeah, let's talk about this." Yeah, you're
Uh,
right. But I love that story about her. But why, going back to what I was asking earlier, did you ever kind of try to figure out what it was that she saw in you before she ever saw you?
I think I'm guessing because I don't know. I have if once I came skidding through the door, I have a unique ability and desire to meet and befriend interesting people.
You've always
Uh,
said that. Yeah.
yeah, Sally Stanford, the Madam of San Francisco, the astronauts, Charlie Manson sitting in his cell in San Quentin. If you're interesting and within my ability to get to you, you and I will meet. So I suspect it was part of that in that I realized I had met a formidable enemy, what, what
She just wasn't going to
opposition.
put up with your nonsense.
Yeah, she her reputation preceded her. I'd never met her or talked to her, but when I was there before I got thrown out, when she'd come down the hall, the seas of people would part. She didn't have to say, "Excuse me." They just parted, and a lot of people wouldn't make eye contact with her. She wasn't disliked. She was feared and respected.
And that's a
And
good, I like that. I mean, that's a
yeah,
nice combination.
and dressed not stylishly. She, the long blue dress and uh, is the way I picture her, and her hair up in a bun and so on. So my guess is teachers, meet and we're going to, okay, we're starting a new year. Who are you going to have? And somebody must have said to her something about me. And it might have been good natured, or it might have been pray to God you don't get him.
Or
He'll,
both.
he'll disrupt your class all year long.
Right,
And
right.
then she goes in and I'm not there. Uh, or maybe they said he's coming back. I don't know how word spreads in that community, having not been a teacher by official profession. Uh, but somehow word got to her. So when I came skidding in late, and she said, Mr. Gay or Ben Gay, I presume, uh, you don't say that unless you're expecting me. How do you do that without even looking up? Just
Right.
because the class laughed.
Oh, she
Here's
knew
an
you were
example
coming. Yeah.
yeah, here's an example of how I think stuff like that happens. In the fifth grade, we had a brand new, right out of teaching college teacher named Fannie Mae Parks. And even I, in the fifth grade, looked around the first day I was in class and thought, my God, it was 80% boys when the school was about 50-50, and the 80% of boys was made up of every hellraiser in the school. Buddy Cudlip, David Bannister, me, Jack Lundy, etc. Every hellraiser. So my theory was at the end of the previous year, the experienced teachers said, we got a new one coming in. Let's load her up all with these people we don't want to deal with. So they took every Hellraiser in the class and stuck it in Fannie Mae Parks, stuck us in Fannie Mae Parks class. And towards about three-quarters of the way through the year, she had an emotional breakdown and was,
Oh,
taken out of the room in a butterfly net. So their
oh,
system worked. I
our
suspect,
system worked.
yeah, but
You said that out loud. You shouldn't have said that out loud.
I
Sorry.
suspect that's how I wound up with Ms. Griffin, but it wouldn't have been shuffling off a bad person onto her. She was way too wise for that. I think she heard about me and said, put him in my class.
Yeah, I'll fix him.
Yeah, I'll fix. I'm always kidding with waiters and waitresses. They say, what would you like? I said, a glass of wine first. We just came from marriage counseling. It's one of my standard opening lines. And Gigi, if she's listening, will look up and say, yeah, I drove him by, threw him out, and said, fix him. So I think Ms. Griffin got me as a work at home project deliberately. I think she liked challenges like that because everybody respected her and or feared her. I think I'm the only student who loved her. She was exactly what I needed. And I came from a strict mother and father, so it wasn't new to me. If somebody wanted to stand up to me and tell me what to do, I was much more pliable than people realized.
Well, that makes sense. And see, and when
But
I was
she's
at
gone now,
school,
so I can't
yeah,
ask her.
no, but I suspect that you're probably very, work at home project. I love that. But yeah, when I was
She
in
said to me one
school,
day, I called her Ms. Griffin. two or three times in one of our early conversations, and she said, Ben, call me Edith. And my first reaction was, why? And I didn't know
No,
you had a
no.
first name, but she kept saying, no, no, call me Edith. You're a grown man,
Yeah.
please. And I said, and it was like the conversation I had with Dr. Napoleon Hill the
Yep.
first time he
Can't
asked
do
me to
it.
call
Yeah.
me Nappy.
Nope.
I
Ain't
said,
happening, hon.
no, two and a
Wow.
half years, two or three times a day, he would say, call me Nappy. Never. And I wasn't going to call Ms. Griffin Edith.
No, I wouldn't be able to either. Yeah, there's just some, and I'm in the South. You're from the South. We still around here, it's Miss this and Mr. that. I mean, my neighbor
Hmm.
next door is
Yep,
he's probably 8 or 9 years younger than I am, and he's still Mr. Tommy.
sure.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. The neighborhood kids and I only know them because their parents buried my dog for me, and I take them cookies every Christmas. But hey, Miss Denise, how are you doing? I'm well. How are you? That's just the way it's done.
Well, there are many things I miss about the South. Heat and humidity are not among them, but everything
No.
else, I love the culture, I love the people, I love the food, the graciousness, everything. When Gigi and when I took her to the South for the first time, and somebody said, why don't y'all come over and have dinner with us? And it was about an hour before dinner time, And I said, fine. And Gigi said to me quietly somewhere, uh, they probably didn't mean that. I said, no, honey, you're in the South.
They
Come
meant
over
it.
and come
Yeah.
over. They meant it. And
Hmm.
we walk in an hour later and it looked like Thanksgiving. I don't know if they
Right.
have a meal hidden in the closet ready, but it was a complete spread. And she fed my sister, her husband, Gigi, me, her, and her husband on an hour's notice. A
And
lovely meal.
it's not unusual. Listen, when my friend Maggie will come over and she'll say, listen, Juanita's coming with me or my brother Ned's coming. I've got lunch done by the time they're there. I
Hmm.
wasn't planning on cooking a darn thing, but they got tacos, tamale, they got it all. They got the full meal.
Well, to our listeners who might think we're not talking about selling, we really are.
We are.
I kid with people because I believe there are two types of people in life, those who glide through life and those who bump through life. They get up in the morning looking for a problem. They find one within a half an hour if they're slow. And then there are those of us who have figured out how to deal with people, customers, prospects, strangers in the store, wherever. And we make friends wherever I look forward to going to the grocery store because I'll make 8 or 10 new casual friends, kid with them. If I talk alone to a lady, as soon as Gigi walks up, I say, Gigi, this lady was just flirting with me. And then Gigi's response always is, oh, you wish. Uh,
Really?
but I've now made a new friend. And 30 days later, I bump into that same lady in an aisle somewhere and say, hi, how are you? We're buddies. If I was selling something, that she was qualified to buy. It would be a lay down sale because first I make friends. I love doing it anyway. I would do it if I were a car mechanic. Uh, but in selling, it comes in so handy. The back half of sell quality products that are competitively priced to qualified people is while you are becoming a person of class, quality, and substance
And
with the
integrity.
and integrity, right?
Yeah.
With the ability to tastefully project that. It's not, hi, I'm Ben Gay, I'm a person of class, quality, and substance and integrity, but the ability to tastefully project it, to make them feel safe with you. This is a safe zone.
Hmm.
Once I know you, I'll kid with you lovingly, and know you might be 3 minutes, but once I know you, I'll kid with you lovingly and so on. But I'm not a threat. I'm not the male version of Karen. Uh, and Gigi has a cousin named Karen who we'll see before the day's over. And I've been meaning to ask her and haven't, is how is your life with a name like Ben Gay? I can empathize. How is your life since Karen took on a whole new meaning? but
Yep.
I like them to know I'm not Karen. I'm your somebody in the store, clerk, a register person looks up and says, "I'm sorry it's taking so long." I say something like, "Honey, I've waited over 80 years for this moment.
And
I
I'm
can
still
go,
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can go another 40 minutes."
right. Right. Yeah, and honestly, it's just how you show up, and you don't have to say a whole heck of a lot. But
Hmm.
if you're standing there politely, kindly, and listen, people say, "Oh, I can't read auras," or "I can read auras." You can read how people are presenting when they're not making a noise.
Hmm.
Pay
Yep.
attention to how people are, how they are around you, how they are around the dog, how they're treating the waiter, how they're treating their wives or their children. Pay attention. I tend to not listen to a whole lot of what people are saying. When I say people, I'm talking about
Hmm.
politicians. I don't listen to them, none. But I'm watching them. I'm watching what they're doing because there's almost always, a huge disconnect between what's coming out of their mouth and their sales copy and what they're really portraying. And if you're paying
Hmm.
attention, you can tell.
Hugh Harris called it with salespeople. He says he can't stand the smell of commission breath.
Yep, exactly. I keep thinking about that guy that was trying to sell my ex-husband the Mercedes. It was already bought. He had the check in his hand, but he was trying to sell me the Mercedes, and I hated that car. It was low to the ground. It went rum, rum. I didn't want it. It was his car, but the guy kept trying. It was just in his DNA. Sell the woman, sell the woman. There's the check, you idiot. I walked out. I
He,
said, "You
yeah, he
finish this,"
went
and
to
I
the
walked
class.
out.
He went
Yeah.
to the class that said women make the final decision.
Yeah, the
You know,
decision
sell.
was made. I was just there to, say, "Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cute." I don't want it, but it's cute. And it was. Yeah, but listen, we are out of time. So listen, everybody, if you want to stay on track with us, I suggest that you grab your own copies of the Closers Part 1 and Part 2. And we are working through these classic sales guides. They're also known globally as the Sales Bibles, one powerful lesson at a time. And we're always talking about sales. We may be kind of joking and cutting up a little bit, but there's always sales in there, how we present, how you can present. There's something to learn. So, Ben, where can we find the Closers books with free shipping? Oh, and my own contribution to this series, the Closers Part 4, Podcasting as Marketing, will be joining the lineup soon. I'm excited. I can't wait to get it out there and get it published. So, tell
So
people
are
where to go
we.
to find it.
The Closers series is available. It's available many places, but the best place to get it because you get the best pricing and free shipping and a lifetime unconditional, no questions asked, money back guarantee is at stores, stores dot ebay dot com, com, dot, excuse me, forward slash Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS, one word, Ronzoni Books. In by two, out the same day, signed, dated with all the benefits I just suggested. So that's how you get it. And if you want to send us questions or uh, make personal contact with me, my email is B as in Ben, F as in Frank, G as in gay, the number three, BFG3 at DirectCon, short for Direct Connect, DirectCon as in November dot net. And I will, if you have a question, I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. How do they reach you, young lady? Denise.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say you can't hit throw a stick on the internet without hitting me. And really, the best way to go is just go to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com and find me over there or LinkedIn. But I have to tell you, I had a note yesterday from somebody. She wanted to meet you, and I made the introduction, and she was so excited. She said, "My book arrived, and I've started reading it, and it's signed and it's dated, but he didn't write my name in it." I went, "That's not part of the deal." But still, yeah. But she's so excited. She said, "I had the nicest talk with him. He's everything you described. See, I can do it. I can take instruction." But she was just very excited to meet you and have the book.
Um, I am blessed with that book. It is my passport to credibility. I have met so many interesting people because they read the book, got the book, heard about the books. I say book singular out of habit, what we now call Closers Part One. But between you and some other good people, Closers Part Seven is being written, and yours is the Closers Part Four.
More,
So we
right.
can't wait to welcome that to the family.
And when you told me because you didn't ask me if I wanted to write the book, you just said, "Well, Denise, you're going to write a book." I went, "Okay." I was just
Well,
floored
see,
by
if I
it.
ask, there's a 50-50 chance.
It was
Telling people.
75-20. But yeah, and I started writing it and I had it almost done not too long ago, but my writing has gotten better as I've been doing this and doing some other things. So I'm going back and reworking a little bit so it makes more sense. And I'm really loving the editing process. So it'll be done soon.
Well, if you love editing, you have a mental illness, and I pray you get therapy and get over it. I hate editing.
I can't afford therapy. I'm just stuck with the editing. So it's, but I'm enjoying it because I'm thinking, okay, that was really good. Oh, but it could be better. But there does come a point where I have to say, stop it. And I'm
Yeah.
getting very close to stop it, Denise, but it'll be out there soon. Well, everybody listen. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast. We love that you're here and we're glad you joined us. And you have a question, send them my way, send them our way. And as time permits, we'll be answering listener questions every Wednesday. This week we didn't have any. Well, we didn't have time because we were yakking. But if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And your support helps us reach more listeners and keep the conversations going. And we will see you next time. Ben, thank you. I'll see you next Wednesday. And
All
keep
right.
me posted on what's going on. And because I know you've got fires going on right there. So, send me the occasional email if you would.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.